my homies and I were like, we started partying before everybody else, and like hotboxing our little car and before class.
Of course.
And that's how it was. And then, but we also sort of like, graduated to heavier stuff. And so I was always experimenting throughout my life, and it never got too out of control. But during COVID, I was like in sort of a depressed place, and just let loose. I was just like, I'm just gonna see how far I can take this. And
Hey, what's up, Tyler? How are you?
hey man, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I appreciate you doing this.
Dude, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm Adam. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Good to meet you, Adam. Right on.
It's crazy. We have a friend in common. The guy that wrote the theme song for my podcast is Scott Russo, and you were in the Unwritten Law video. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, he always has good things to say about you. And I'm like, I think I'm going to interview him coming up. He's like, that guy's dope. I'm like, oh, awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, I love him. I love his band. That was like a dream come true that I got to do that. That was insane. I've covered Seeing Red on my tours before, and they've just been like a huge inspiration to me. So that was insane.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I grew up with, or they're a little bit older than me, but I grew up with John Grill. They're his brother. So when he joined the band and stuff, that was so crazy. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I remember going to see them as a young kid, and then seeing him play with them now is crazy. He was in the like teenage suicide video, and now he's like in the band.
Right.
It's so crazy. But dude, yeah, thank you so much again for doing this. It's about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk about the album and everything else you have coming up.
Sweet, dude. Yeah, sounds great, man. Let me turn this
cool
over here. A little better light going on. There we go.
Amazing. So you're born and raised in LA or Santa Monica? Is that what I said?
Yeah. I was born in Santa Monica, grew up. We sort of moved around all throughout Los Angeles before I was like 4 years old. And then when I was like 3 or 4, we landed in a little small town just north of Los Angeles called Santa Clarita.
Okay.
Suburbs of LA. Not much to do other than skateboard and listen to punk rock. And so that's kind of
a lot of Southern California, right? Or surf
Exactly.
or whatever. Yeah. I'm from San Diego. That's how I know the UO guys. But like, yeah, that's cool, man. So skateboard, listen to punk rock. Is that how you got into music a little bit? I know for me, skateboarding was like a huge like door to all these bands just from the videos and stuff.
Yeah, it kind of happened simultaneously. So my parents are huge music fans. My dad took me to my first concert. Peter, Paul, and Mary, they like played Puff the Magic Dragon and
a
bunch of other shit. And but my dad introduced me to like some, heavier stuff like Derek and the Dominoes, and Layla was like my favorite song when I was a kid, and Jimi Hendrix, and Creedence Clearwater, and all of those great bands from like the Woodstock era. That was my dad's kind of forte. And then my mom introduced me to Alanis Morissette and Joni Mitchell and Santana. And so I just had like automatically a really good taste in good music, but this was like, early 90s. So the stuff wasn't outdated. There was just newer shit going on that I wasn't quite aware of yet. And my older brother, who's a guitarist also, the only other really musician in my family, was a big fan of Sublime and Metallica. He's a big metalhead. And so he introduced me to that world. So it was like I was getting a newer sort of taste of music. And then at my friend's 7th birthday party, Enema of the State had just come out. And we're playing it on a boombox. And I was like, what is this? I've never heard anything like it before. And that was when I was like, I finally found my taste. I had all these other influences from my family, but this was like something that I found on my own, and it hit me really intensely, and I felt such a connection to it. And I think partly because there was a few reasons. I think I was an actor when I was still am. I started acting really young, and I kind of felt like not connected with the business, that side of the business, because I don't know, I was introduced to a lot of actors who I think were kind of like, for lack of a better term, like kind of like divas. And so I was like, I don't know if I like this world. And I was kind of embarrassed by having a career at such a young age. And music is something that I finally found like, oh wow, I feel identified with this. And punk rock and pop punk and then sort of skateboarding sort of went hand in hand with that. It was something that I felt like I could do that made me feel normal. Because like having a career at like 7 years old, you felt really disconnected from your peers and the kids that you were friends with. You know, I just felt like an alien, you know, in this little small town that I was growing up in. And, you know, everybody knew each other. I had a lot of friends, but the more and more I would travel and stay away, the less connected I felt to a home base and to friends. And so punk rock and skateboarding kind of made me feel like I had a home base, you know, and it kept me sort of grounded. And that's pretty much where it took off. And so whenever I traveled, I would always bring my skateboard with me, and then I would go to the music store, the CD store, and just buy Blink, just hundreds of Blink and their documentaries, and they would introduce me to No Effects and Green Day and Screeching Weasel and all of these punk bands, and it literally like they became my friends, because when I was on the road working, most of the time I was the only kid, and so there weren't too many people around to kind of, you know, keep me preoccupied and busy and distracted. And so my friends became my skateboard and Blink-182.
Well, yeah, I can imagine that being hard. I mean, to be young, an actor, and then you're probably, you know, surrounded by only, you know, older people in the industry. And then you're kind of there like, yeah, this is great, but you know, I want to go do kid stuff also.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I did feel a sense of like, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the position that I was in. I felt like, you know, it was nice to feel like I had a career at a young age. I don't know. I didn't feel too like bad about that. I always sort of patted myself on the back, like, was like, this is fucking cool, you know, at a young age.
It's really cool.
I always knew that this was like a cool life, and I always sort of like was proud of myself for it. But there was an element of like wanting to fit in that I was kind of like reaching for always. Yeah.
Was acting something you were interested in at a very young age? Was that something that you're like, oh, this is cool, like I want to do this? Because I believe your father's an actor, isn't he?
Yeah, it was sort of influenced by him. So when my mom was pregnant with my brother, my dad was filming on sets, and he needed to babysit me essentially. And so he would take me to sets, and you know, a short day on a film set is 12 hours. So it's, you know, you're automatically thrust into some like really long hours. And but I didn't really complain. I was always kind of kicking it and kind of fascinated by the whole process. And I just sort of grew up around it. And then my dad took me to an audition, my first audition, and I guess I hated it. The story is that I fucking hated it. I was like, I don't like this. I feel uncomfortable and weird, and auditioning in front of like random strangers was, I mean, to this day, that's not the funnest thing in the world.
Right. It's still kind of, it's still kind of uncomfortable, I would imagine, being,
It's not a fun process. But I guess a year later, I came back to him and I was like, I think I want to try that again. And basically have been working ever since. So it's, I did eventually find a passion for it, and my passions are still growing within it. Like I want to branch out other than just acting. I've been writing and directing and producing and trying to make my own projects. And so I guess I'm really creative in kind of in whatever front, whether it's music, filmmaking, making food, you know, whatever. It's like, I like to exercise creativity sort of through everything. And yeah.
I mean, it's awesome that you not only have this great acting career, but you are doing something that you fell in love with at 7, you know, playing pop or just punk and being around those bands, and you're in a bunch of their videos. I mean, like State Champs, you're in the Halsey video. Like that's like one of my favorite Halsey songs. I was like, oh my gosh, he's in this music video. Like that's just, to me, like, how cool. And you've worked with Travis Barker. I mean, having that be kind of the gateway to the music you're listening to, that's really rad, just kind of how that's all unraveled for you.
It is, dude. It's nice. Unravel, that's the name of my album.
I know. I didn't try to throw that in there, but I
I mean, yeah, you're right, dude. It's I don't know, it's hard to put into words. I'm so fucking fortunate and like lucky and grateful and I don't know, I kind of always like foresaw this at a young age and just strived for it and always did my best to kind of like express my love and passion for this scene. And I think that's really how it started. Like I was always just vocal online because I know that, you know, this scene it didn't disappear, but it you know, sort of pop took precedence for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And as I was sort of on my rise, I wanted to reintroduce this scene to my fans who were younger and probably didn't really know too much about this unless they had like an older sibling. And so I was always super vocal about it on Twitter, on Instagram, and posting state champs and neck deep and knuckle puck and story so far. And I was like, you guys got to listen to these bands, blah, blah, blah. And everyone sort of started taking notice. And at that point I was in bands also. And, you know, playing one-off shows here and there and doing small little tours. And yeah, I just always wanted it to, I was just trying to, you know, spread the love, spread the word and of how it affected me. And hopefully it could do the same to, you know, somebody else.
I love how that's the scene is coming back. I mean, that was the music I listened to growing up, like all the pop punk and emo bands, like Taking Back. I remember seeing a lot of these bands play to 20 people, and then
Right.
this whole scene is just exploded again, which is so cool to see.
It is
And
cool.
yeah, and the fact that you're doing this, and a lot of other artists that have kind of popped off doing the pop punk thing and just doing it in such a new way. I mean, it obviously it fits in the realm, but it's just like this updated version of it. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, it is nice that, you know, it has a home again. You know, the fact that Blink is like, in my opinion, the biggest band in the world right now is like,
Oh yeah.
dude, when they played Coachella, I was like watching the live stream and was literally crying the entire time. It's something that I've been like, I don't know, man. That was really special. Tom to me is just, I have his little guitar signed right here, and
Oh, that's dope.
yeah, it's his little Stratocaster. I have the real version somewhere in my closet somewhere, but that's just that he's been the most influential person in my life, other than my dad, my family. And so the fact that like I could see them playing again, was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, it's really awesome that they got back together at the three of them. I mean, I loved Alkaline Trio and Matt
Love
Skiba,
it.
but it's just not, it's not Blink. When I saw him a couple times with him,
Right.
I was like, God, I need, Tom needs to be back in this band. But
Yeah.
so what about getting into like guitar, like playing music at all? Like when did you start venturing that way?
Yeah, I got my first guitar I got a tiny guitar at like 5 years old, this little tiny like electric guitar that I never really picked up, but I would my older brother was always a Metallica head, and so I would there's like home videos of me like just open strumming it, singing Enter Sandman. So that was like my first, I guess, taste of it, but then I didn't get serious about it until I was about like 11 or 12. I just during those like years before, I was filming in Toronto, Canada, and I was 8 years old to 12. And so that entire 4 years, like I said, my only friends were going to the CD store and getting Blink and other punk music. And I just like grew such a love for music. And I was like, I want to not only listen to it, I need to be a part of it somehow. I've been like writing lyrics, and I want to know how to put them to a song, and I want to know how to play the song. And so as soon as I got home and had enough time, and I went to my local music store and like picked up a guitar or picked up a bass. I think I picked up a bass first. I started playing bass and guitar at the same time. But bass was like the first thing I really started. I think because it felt like an easier instrument to kind of master, I guess. And so I was like 12 years old, immediately slapped like Atticus stickers, audio stickers, every single skate company you could think of, like was it was like a little Squire Bronco bass, and it was just covered in Blink stickers, and it was so cool. And then I picked up a guitar not too long after that and took a couple of lessons, and they basically just taught me like Newfound Glory songs and Blink songs, because Catalyst, Newfound Glory's album, had just come out at that time. And so I was just learning that on bass and and guitar, and immediately started a band, little garage band. We were called what were we called? I don't know if we had a name.
Okay.
But, eventually it was like Toothless Sidekicks and Close to Disaster, Black Tie Event, you know, little fucking punk rock band names. And yeah, that's really how it started. And I just kind of taught myself how to play like songs, and immediately started like recording myself. I knew that I didn't just want to learn how to play other people's songs. I knew I wanted to be creative, and I had my own voice that I wanted to get out into the world. And so I started recording on this little tiny 8-track Roland recorder. That's all it was. It was just a little instrument that had 8 tracks, and you could record on top of one another. And it was the first time I had ever seen something like that, and never dealt with anything like that before. And so it was just like this fucking future just sitting in front of me. I was like, this thing is so sick. I couldn't believe like the technology. And eventually I got like a bigger one. It was 12 tracks, and it had a CD burner inside of it. And I was like, oh, dude, it's game over from here. Like, this is like the epitome of technology. I think this is the coolest thing ever. And so I would like record songs and then burn them on this little CD, and then like hand them out and my friends and wherever, and, you know, go to punk shows. And then I graduated to like Pro Tools and got a laptop or whatever. And so, yeah, so that was the history of kind of me learning guitar. And one of my best friends at the time was playing bass, and he was always Mark and I was always Tom. And so we just constantly were in the studio practicing in my garage and making noise. And it was a really fun time. And my town had a really sick music scene. It was a lot of ska. There was a lot of ska going on back then.
Mm-hmm.
But there was still a really good little punk scene. And so it was just really nice. Like, you know, all the bands knew each other, and I idolized like the other older bands who like had a small little record deal. I was like, God, you guys are so fucking cool. And it was cool. It was a cool little town to grow up in, you know.
Do you remember any of those? Did any of those bands end up sticking around and doing anything? Do you remember?
There's a band called Halifax. Remember
Oh
Halifax?
yeah, I remember those guys. Yeah.
They were was kind of in that scene. They were just like
Okay.
moving up, and we were like, wow, these guys are fucking great. There was another band called Federline. I don't know if you know them. They were pretty
No.
not they were huge to me, but they never really popped
Like
off.
Rogue. Yeah.
And fuck, there was somebody else. There was a band called The Gamble. Yeah, they were just huge in my eyes, but I don't think they ever really made it.
Yeah, it's cool that I love hearing those stories, because it's like I remember as a kid in San Diego seeing bands that I thought was like, oh my gosh, like these guys are like rock stars. And then you look at like the big picture when you're older and you're like, well, they had this big following in town, but still, I mean, that's so cool to have those memories and like be like, oh, one day, you know, I want to do what these guys are doing. And it's like it's such a local level, but at that time it doesn't even matter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely sort of it helped kind of like push me, motivate me to get there, you know?
Yeah. And then you did a few other bands, I mean, between what you're doing now, right? Yeah, like Lost in Costco. You had a
Lost in Costco was the first band that felt like a complete project. Me and my best friend started this band, and then I met this other dude from this other band, and then another kid, I think from school. And so we made this little 4-piece. And it was like right around the same time that Teen Wolf was getting popular. So we were like, let's go see if we can play some gigs. And I can't remember how we reached out to the Roxy over here on Sunset, but we were like, do you mind if we play some shows here? And they were like, absolutely. And so we sold out like 3 or 4 times in a row. And I was like, this is fucking insane. And it was like my first taste of that, you know, of what it felt like to be a rock star, you know. And we had so much fun, and then Teen Wolf started getting really, you know, taking all of my time away. And so we just sort of called it quits for a little while, and then I got back at it once Teen Wolf ended a few years later. And then we started another band called Pavements, and then decided I wanted to do something a little bit different. Started another band called 5 North, and then COVID happened. And so 5 North was with John Feldmann. That was the first time I was in a label, and and doing,
Wow.
it felt it, yeah.
Yeah. How
So
did
like,
you end up meeting John Feldmann?
yeah, so Pavements, we did like a couple of that was like, so Lost in Costco was really fun and my first taste of everything. Teen Wolf happened. After Teen Wolf, we started Pavements, and that was where we took it really seriously. Like we set up tours, we toured in the US, we toured 2 or 3 times in the UK and in Europe, and really started like garnering a, you know, a fan base and love. And it was small shows, you know, for the most part. But it was fucking awesome, dude. Like
Yeah,
it
but
was,
you were doing it. I mean, that's awesome to
yeah.
tour internationally.
Yeah, it was great. And I really wanted to earn it, you know, like we never toured in the bus. We were always in some little tiny van, like cramped up next to each other. And that's the way I saw Blink-182 doing it in these little documentaries, you know, like Urethra Chronicles. And
Oh yeah.
I
I
was
have
like,
that on a VHS tape over
exactly,
here somewhere.
exactly.
That's awesome.
So I was like, that's what I want to do, and I want to earn it. And this was such a scene that I wanted to, I don't know if impress is the right word, but I wanted to cut my teeth. I wanted to show my peers in this scene. I'm like, look, I know that I have this other career that's sort of helped catapulting me, but I never want to use that as like a crutch. You know, I always want to be earning this from the ground up. And so that's how we did it. And so we were playing the last year of Warped Tour. We played like 4 dates, the Ventura, and then all the last 3 Florida dates. And I have a really good friend who knows John Feldmann, and he's like, John's gonna be there. If you see him, tell him I said hi. Say to go up to him and introduce yourself. You know, I know you want to meet him. I was like, sure. And so I saw him backstage, and he was with his kids, and I was just gonna let him walk by, be like, I don't want to bother him, but I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll say hi. And I was like, hey, John. And he's like, oh yeah, Tyler, my buddy said to meet you. Yeah, yeah. And so like introduced himself and met his kids and took a picture with his kids. And then I was like, dude, if you want, my band's playing right here in like a couple hours. He's like, I'll stop by. It's like fucking awesome. And so like it was already cool that I was at Warped Tour in Ventura. That was the first place I ever went to in Warped Tour when I was 14 years old. And so
Rad.
playing that venue was a huge full circle moment for me. And I was just soaking it in. And halfway through the set, I look out, and at this point, I'm friends with State Champs and all of, you know, the up and coming like punk bands. And I look out, and John Feldmann's standing with Derek, and I think Ryan and Tyler from State Champs. And they're in the back of the crowd, and it was a pretty sizable crowd. I was like stoked, and there was like floaties being thrown in the air, maybe like a sex doll being thrown in the air. And it was just like a dream come true. And then I saw them out in the back, and I was like, God, that's so fucking cool. And at this point, Feldy was just starting the label Big Noise. And I remember he blasted out like something on Instagram saying, send in your band. We're looking for bands to sign. And I don't think I ever sent my band in, but after the set, he like gave me his number, and he was like, I'm having a birthday in a couple of days or a week, or I can't remember. I would love for you to stop by. And I was like, all right, great. I stopped by at his house, and he was introducing me to everybody, and took me back into his studio where he's done Blink and 5 Seconds of Summer and The Used, you know, every fucking band that I fell in love with. And he was showing me new Blink, and I was like, get the fuck out of here. Where am I? And then he looks at me, and he's like, how do you feel about me signing your band? And I was like, dude, of course, please, yes, absolutely. I did not expect anything like that, but I'm in 100%. I'm dedicating and committing and whatever. And so at that point, like Pavements and I were kind of feeling like we wanted to go separate ways. And then and so we started a new band, 5 North, and the bassist was my tour manager and one of my best friends from growing up. And his brother was in that band Federline that I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Like this huge band for us. And then my drummer was the dude from Makeout, who Feldmann introduced me to, the drummer from Makeout, Scott Eckel. And so we started this little band called 5 North. And that was the band that kicked off Big Noise for me. And it was so much fun, dude. It was just like another new like stepping stone in this world, and felt fresh and fun and exciting. And the creativity within the studio with Feldmann was just like, I really felt like we were really in tune with each other. And, you know, we both grew up playing punk rock music, and it was so much fun writing off of one another, he and I, and I don't know, dude, it Pavements felt like a band for me, but this felt like, I don't know, just it felt like the next step, and it really felt like something that I was proud of and excited about, and then COVID happened, like after our first show, our first real show.
Did you have the record finished at that point?
So we had an EP done.
Yeah, the Scumbag EP.
Yeah,
Is that
exactly.
that one? Okay.
Yeah. So that came out.
So that came out before COVID. Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, like just before COVID. And
Okay.
so we played, we were like setting up tours and shows, and we played one show. Oh no, sorry, we did two shows. We did an emo night show. That was our first show. And then we did another show with this band called Cut You Up.
Oh yeah. They opened for Blink
Yes.
and Green Day on that Pop Disaster tour.
Pop Disaster tour, yeah. And they had the documentary Riding in Vans with Boys, which is my favorite movie in the entire world.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh, dude, you got to see it.
I have to check it out.
All about the Pop Disaster tour. Blink are in it. They're all. It's and it follows Cut You Up, and they're just maniacs. And so,
real quick, sorry, I don't want to interrupt your story. I just have a quick question about the film. Okay, so the word is they got so hammered before the San Diego show that they didn't make it to the stage. Is that on there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it was hammered, but I think
like they missed the time or something, right?
Chris was with Tom, riding in the bus somewhere, and all the dudes were like giving him shit for it. Like two of the members were like gone, and they missed their show. And like the other members were like, I'm gonna quit, I'm gonna fucking leave. And you see it all happening on this documentary, dude.
That's crazy.
It's like cinematic masterpiece.
I remember hearing about that. I didn't know it was in this film. What's the film called again? I just didn't want to type it in real quick. So I don't.
Riding in Vans with Boys.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up.
Best soundtrack. It's, dude, it is just like the best fucking thing in the world. And so I started getting close with Brandon Parkhurst, who played guitar and I think bass. They would switch off every now and then. He and I started getting close about some other stuff, and then he was like, yo, Cut You Up's having a show, let's play. And I was like, dude, get the fuck out of here. Like my life just kept getting like cooler and cooler and cooler and cooler and cooler. And we played that show, and literally it was like February of 2020. And so it was like the next day COVID had happened. And
oh my God,
my drummer lives in Australia. So he couldn't come to the US for years. And then my bassist started like, he had another career that he was working on because like music, you know, he needed a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm just kind of in the studio by myself. I might want to try a solo thing and see how that goes. And my name has more of a recognition than my band at this point. And I don't know, it just kind of felt like a step that was sort of calling to me. And, you know, I love having a band. I love having bandmates and friends. And I still have people that I play with all the time who are some of my best friends that are in my band. But I wanted to experiment and try out the solo project. And I don't know, I've never really seen a solo project that is also just like punk rock, you know. I guess there's some out there, you know, especially now. But I thought that was kind of an interesting take on it, you know, an artist who's like, you know, the name of the person, but also is doing like, you know, full on punk. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting take on it. And it's still sort of an experiment and still going through it and figuring it out. But that's how it happened.
And because you put out Drugs, that EP, was that written during that COVID time, or like kind of after when you were figuring out what to do next as far as the band?
So that was originally, it started with 5 North. This was before I decided to do Tyler Posey.
Okay.
And halfway through it, I was like getting sober. So this was like during COVID. I kind of had like I don't know, growing up in Southern California, you're gonna smoke pot and skateboard like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's so my homies and I were like, we started partying before everybody else, and like hotboxing our little car and before class.
Of course.
And that's how it was. And then, but we also sort of like, you know, graduated to heavier stuff. And so I was always experimenting throughout my life, and it never got too out of control. But during COVID, I was like in sort of a depressed place and just let loose. I was just like, I'm just going to see how far I can take this, and ended up going too far and realizing like, okay, this lifestyle doesn't work for me. And so it was like right around that same time that we were recording Drugs EP 405 North. Halfway through, I was getting sober. So the EP became about getting sober and sort of my life before and how it is after. And then it just felt like so personal that I was like, I don't know, maybe I should make this, you know, my own story with my name. And that's just kind of how it happened. And then Travis got on a song, and Fem was introduced to me at that point, and we started writing a bunch of music, and then we fell in love. And it took a little bit of time. It wasn't that quick, but yeah, it was a really cool, like sort of like era for me, and still riding off those coattails, and you know,
Fem's opening for you, I think, on your album release, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's always a weird thing when you're asking your partner to open for you, you know.
Yeah.
But the night I was like, you know, I just want homies there. I just want friends and loved ones. And so it only makes sense to have you there with me. It would be weird for me to open for you because it's my show, but that's how I want it. You know, I don't want you to open for me. But she's, you know, the biggest team player, is excited, and so it's yeah. So she's opening for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so you have an album. This is like your first album. Why'd you decide to go do a full album instead of continuing with an EP?
To me, it's a rite of passage. You know, growing up, all the bands I idolized, I never once saw an EP. Maybe Fly Swatter from Blink. But it was all
there really was an EP. I mean, this is kind of a new explosion, I feel like.
Exactly. Yeah. And so all my inspirations, I was like, I've never seen an EP before, and it was always something I really wanted to do. And every EP that we did, I was like, there's more. I want to do more. It's not enough for me. And so I always tried to squeeze in the maximum amount of songs that an EP can hold. And I think my last one was like 8 songs, which is almost an album, a full length.
Right.
So it's something that I've just it's been calling to me, and I've always wanted to do. And I think it's so cool to have a whole body of work that's, you know, that's big, that's long, and kind of takes you on like a little bit of a journey. And I feel like an EP isn't quite long enough to really get sucked into and take you on a journey. And it's just something I really wanted to me, it felt like a rite of passage. And I was, you know, at this point, I left Feldy's label, you know, all amicably. Like, we're still really, really close. I'm seeing him like tomorrow. It was just something that I kind of wanted to try out on my own. You know, it became, I put this added pressure on myself being in a label, that there's like, you know, a whole team of people that I now need to sort of not impress, but, you know, their jobs are at my stake, you know, and I felt like added pressure to make songs that people wanted to hear, as opposed to songs that I wanted to write and play. Just because like I wanted the label to do good, and I wanted me to be a part of that. And so like I knew that pop punk wasn't the biggest thing in the world, and so I felt almost guilty writing songs that I loved, you know what I mean, because they weren't getting the biggest plays or whatever. And so I was like, all right, I need to take a step back here. This isn't fun for me anymore. Maybe I need to be solo. And so they honored that completely and let me be independent. And so what this album is. This is my first independent release in a few years, but it's also my first full length. And so it's a lot of milestones kind of happening at one time. And yeah, it's all still kind of an experiment. And I'm just like, but the thing that matters the most is that like I'm having fun. Like it's the album is just like, it's sort of eclectic. Like it obviously has a punk rock foundation, but it's kind of all over the place. And that's what I wanted to express, was that, like, you know, 31 years of my life now, my tastes have sort of broadened, and they're not just, you know, strictly Blink-182 and pop punk, even though that's my biggest love. I wanted to sort of show the world that, like, or my fans, that, you know, here's all my influences, and they're all sort of from this sort of era of late 90s, early 2000s that I wanted to reintroduce to, you know, some kids who maybe weren't around at that time, or have never heard of that era before. And so I've got a lot of stuff in there that kind of resembles, you know, anything from Sugar Ray to Alkaline Trio to Blink to Green Day, Alanis Morissette. Like, that whole era sort of is encompassed in this EP or full-length album. And so yeah,
like I love the songs I've heard thus far. I mean, with Runnin, I mean, that's like a more of like a reggae-ish vibe song, and then you can hear it in just the singles that you've released thus far.
Yeah, that's kind of eclectic. And
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
rad. It doesn't sound like straightforward like a punk rock record. It's like there's
right.
yeah, cool
Yeah,
elements.
that's definitely what I wanted. I wanted to even see him like, and for me, I kind of have that luxury to sort of be eclectic because I think a lot of artists are sort of happily pigeonholed in their own genre because if they step outside of it, the fans are like, "What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, yeah.
How dare you?" And so for me, I have this other career where I'm not solely relying on music. So I'm not like, okay, I need to do this structured and safe. I can kind of go outside of the box a little bit and explore and experiment. And so I went for it, and yeah, Runnin has like a 311 vibe, which
Yeah.
I love that band so much, and they're one of my favorite bands. And so I really wanted to kind of just like put it all in there, that all my loves, and see how people enjoy it.
That's amazing. And when did you know you're gonna write an album when you went into this, or did you have a couple songs and you're like I want to do
No,
this.
I
I
did.
really
I
want to do an
actually,
album.
I didn't know. I knew that I was going to have a shitload of a body of work. Like I knew that like I was going to have a shitload of songs, and I was like, I just want to release them. I'm tired of like writing music and it just sitting there. Like I want to just release all of it. So I knew I had a lot. Originally, I was like, maybe I do 2 EPs. One that's sort of like they're like juxtaposition. Like one's heavy, one's softer. And then I was like, concept albums, hot and cold. Like, what am I going to do here? I was like, I'm just gonna put it all on one. Fuck it. Like I've always wanted to sort of, do the different genres on one album kind of vibe and not pigeonhole myself to anything. And that's how it came about. Yeah, it was I knew that I was gonna release a lot of music. I just didn't know how, in what capacity, if it was gonna be 500 singles or 2 EPs or full length, so. And I still have songs that aren't even on the album that are just sitting there waiting for the next release.
Oh wow. With this release, was this the first one that you've done, at least for the past two, that wasn't with John Feldmann? Did you do the last two with him?
Yeah, I did Scumbag and Drugs with Feldy. And same situation with him. Like when I left the label, there's like, I don't know, 10 songs that aren't released. And I was like, what are we going to do with these? You're not just going to like burn them and throw them away, are you? And he's like, never. He's like, release them. And I was like, oh, dude, thank you so much. And so I've got 5 Feldy songs on this album. One of them
Oh,
was
okay.
Gravity. Gravity was the first song I wrote with Fem and Feldy. And so that one finally made it. I have songs that Feldy and I wrote like 3 or 4 years ago that are on this album. And so I'm happy to kind of get everything out there and so Feldy does have definitely a big hand in this. And
Okay.
yeah.
Was it like doing the other songs that you didn't work with him? Was that a lot different? Like what was that
No,
experience like? Not working with him, and since you had been doing that for a
yeah,
handful of years.
it was pretty similar in the sense that like it was extremely collaborative. Matt Malpass was my producer who did the rest of the album, and he was basically not trained by Feldmann, but he worked with Feldmann for years. And so it was a very similar sort of process. Like Matt and Feldmann sort of they do things very similar because Matt worked with him for so long, and so the process was really like familiar. And yeah, it was just great. Matt is an incredible musician too, and has great ideas. And he and I became really, really good friends. Like he's one of my best friends now, Matt Malpass, and so it was really fun. The whole recording process never felt like a burden, and never felt like work. We like went to Hawaii. We went to Big Bear on the lake, and like Runnin, you can hear the ocean. That's literally our ocean outside of our Airbnb in Hawaii in the beginning of the song. And so it was just like it really just felt like homies kicking it, because that's what it is. And I don't know, I that's what I was missing so much from making music before, is that camaraderie, that friend, just like having fun. And the product is that it's the product of just having fun and collaborating. And just really happy that we were able to do that and capture it. And it's totally like a passion project. Like it's very, I don't know, I just love it so much. It's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, so you didn't have to go to, it sounds like you didn't have to go to like a big studio to record it. It was just did it as like at different places, like you recorded in Hawaii, you recorded in Big Bear, or
Yeah,
those just demo takes? Or
we did 2 locations. He brought all of his equipment, or a condensed version of his equipment. and then we finished it off in his house studio, which is like
Mhm.
a bigger studio space. But it was all pretty much like not guerrilla, but pretty close to that, you know. We were
Yeah.
just like on the go, and it always felt like not work, you know, in that
Mhm.
sense. It was always just like fun and easygoing, and let's try this idea out. Let's try this. There was no pressure because I was now not trying to impress the fans. I was just like, let's fucking have fun and do whatever the hell we want, you know? And so each moment in the studio was so much fun. Like we have hours long, like have you heard of the Mark Tom and Travis show?
Yes, yes.
You know, after the end of the songs, there's just like an
Like
hour of
banter.
banter.
Yeah, yeah.
We have that. So I want to put that out at one point, but like we
Oh,
have,
that's awesome.
and it just shows how much fun we had the entire process. And it's really cool.
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah.
awesome. And you have obviously the record comes out tomorrow, right? The album
Mm,
comes out tomorrow.
holy shit, it does. I keep forgetting, dude. I keep forgetting that it's that close. Yeah, fuck. Or I guess it would come out tonight at like
Tonight.
9,
Yeah.
9 p.m.
9 p.m. on the West Coast.
Holy
I
shit.
recently moved to Nashville like a couple of years ago, so I'll get it at 11.
Right.
But that's so killer, man. It's coming out tonight. Then the show isn't for a couple weeks, though.
Yeah.
Are you gonna do a thing tomorrow for it at all, or just be excited that it's out?
Just gonna be excited that it's out. I'm just like I'm getting tattooed all day tomorrow.
Oh, really? Rad.
Yeah. It's like a 6-hour session, so it's gonna be huge. So that's how I'm celebrating. It's one of my close buddies is tattooing me, so it'll be dope. But yeah, I don't know. I've never really put a lot of pressure on releases. It's kind of just like I forget almost that it's happening.
Yeah.
Because I've seen so many other artists who get really stressed, and especially if like they don't get on a playlist that they want to be on. And I'm just like, I don't want to stress about that at all, because I'll get super stressed and upset and whatever, because I don't know. So I'm just like, I just kind of like let it happen, forget about it, but still, you know, love it and embrace it and have fun and care about it and passionate. So I'll definitely maybe do a live, or you know, I don't know, and I'll do something.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I can't wait to hear it tonight. I've heard, like I said, a few songs off of it, and it's awesome. And I love how it sounds thus far. I can't wait to hear the rest of the record. I was going to ask you, and maybe this is too insider trading information, but I was just curious. I was talking to Scott and Chris a while ago, and they were saying that they were going to write a song with you, or you were going to, before you were even in the video. It was like you guys are still talking about doing the video. And they were
Right.
like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna write something, like, you know, all three of you guys are gonna get together, or at least you and Scott were gonna get together." Did you guys ever do that?
Not yet, no, because they've been on tour and I've been super
Yeah.
busy. But that was always the plan, you know. I always wanted to write with them, and like yeah, that would be a fucking, I don't even know how to describe the feelings behind that, dude. It's another one of those things that's just like, there's no way this is happening, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely the plan for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, they were talking about it, and I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be killer. I can't wait to see it." And that video that you guys did is so cool.
I
Like,
know, dude. I want to like watch
oh,
that movie. I want to
I know.
shoot the actual movie, and dope concept, and they killed it. And so I'm very proud and honored, and just, yeah, super happy about how that turned out.
Do you have any like desire to do that for your project at all? Like, to put it together in a long form, like, video movie
Yeah,
setting?
I've always been trying to connect the dots of both careers and sort of bridge that gap. And how do I merge both worlds? And most of my music videos are pretty cinematic. Like I'll always have some sort of like dialogue before, have some sort of storyline, and make
Oh
it really
yeah.
interesting and fun. And so I do definitely want to. I just haven't really had the time to sort of like sit down and either conceptualize or even just go for it, you know? So hopefully down the road I'll be able to do something like that. But as of right now, I've only done one music video for this album, and it was for my first release, Lemon.
That video is killer.
Yeah, it's fun,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah, exactly what you said. It's just cinematic. I mean, it's really dope. That's why I was curious if you're gonna do something bigger, for like longer format.
Yeah, I definitely want to, you know, like my homies and I, it was basically just me and two of my friends that shot that. It was me,
Oh
Matt,
wow.
the producer, and then my camera operator, who's my best friend. And so that's how we do it. Whenever we film a music video, it's a small condensed crew. We know what we're doing. We film shit all the time. I edit the videos, you know, it's all sort of in-house, and passion project completely. So it's a lot of work. I think that's why it's a little daunting also to sort of undertake it all, but it's good work. Like I love it. So eventually, definitely, I think so. I think it'll happen for sure.
Amazing. And what about a tour for the album? Are you gonna do anything?
Sometime next year. I'm working on doing a UK, Europe, America tour. You know, like it's complicated with both careers. I'm like,
I was gonna say you've got to be so busy doing all the stuff that you
a little bit, you know, but it's I just have to figure out. I have to be strategic about it all. So, I've been dedicating a lot of time to music the past 6 years, 7 years, something like that, and I want to sort of focus on the movie side for a little while, you know, like use the momentum from Teen Wolf and just kind of like keep jumping from project to project, getting my own projects made. So I definitely want to ride that out as long as possible so I don't lose momentum on that end of the world. And then, you know, as soon as I feel pretty satiated from that, I will start booking tours, and that's the plan. You know, I really want to go to Europe, UK, because they're so passionate over there. And I was just there for something else, and they're all like, you have to come tour, please, please. So it's definitely in the books, just nothing concrete yet.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Tyler, for doing this, dude. I'm really,
Thank you.
yeah, this has been so much fun. I have one more question for you before I let you go. Actually, two questions, because I'm curious about your Christmas tree.
Honestly, dude, like this was the first time this last year Christmas that I went all out. I've put lights all on my house, put up this Christmas tree. Like there's a window here that like everyone can see from the street, and literally haven't taken them down. Like, my front gate has 3 wreaths hanging on it, and so it's like I wanted to, and at this point I'm like just lazy, I guess. I'm gonna get there. I really want to take them down because it feels
like now it's kind of cool. It's like Christmas in the summertime coming up.
Yeah, definitely. It feels tacky. I feel tacky. Like I feel like my neighbors are like, God, fucking idiot.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, my last question is if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, I guess a bunch. Yeah. Take it all in. Like always, like be present and learn the hard way sometimes. Like for me, I had to fall in love with music. Like when I got on the label, I was trying to impress other people. It's a tough one, man, because like sometimes music is people's livelihood. So they need to sort of conform to what the masses are listening to, or be TikTok heavy and kind of promote themselves that way, even though it feels sort of soulless. And like, this isn't why I'm doing this career, is to promote myself like through TikTok, but it's definitely an integral like part to this. And so I don't know, just be true to yourself, like really find out what matters to you, but like learn the hard way, like really go through every avenue and experiment and see what works for you. Like for me, I've realized that like making people happy isn't more important than making myself happy in this career. And also like doing like oversaturating TikTok and social media with press of my music or trying to get people more listens and likes and follows, that doesn't make me happy either. So I've just like pumped the brakes on all of that, and I'm just like now just figuring out again what it is that makes me happy in this industry. So I think it's a constant like being present, experiment, do all the TikToks, do all the weird shit that kind of makes you uncomfortable, get out of your comfort zone, but then reanalyze, check in with yourself every now and then and kind of just like, okay, where am I at? What makes me happy? This hasn't made me happy yet. So maybe I'll, you know, move on, navigate somewhere else. And I don't know, I'm still learning as an artist and musician. So that's where I'm at right now. Definitely.